Let's get this started. Welcome, everyone, to Lawyers Who Stream, second season, episode 2. Joining me is Tom Nachuk and Carly Leons. They're going to be talking all things job market tonight. First, we will do our introduction. The show is streamed and recorded on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is today inhabited by many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, as it has been since before settlers arrived on Turtle Island. Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. I'll introduce our guests tonight. First, we have Tom Nachuk, very helpfully the pronunciation guide with his bio. He graduated from the English Common Law program at the University of Ottawa in 2021. He attended 1L at the University of Windsor before transferring to Ottawa, so honorary Windsorite. There we go.
Or you wouldn't be allowed on. That's
Yeah,
the rules.
exactly. You have to have gone to Windsor to be an honorary Windsor, right?
Mm-hmm.
He is currently articling in Toronto at a nonprofit in constitutional law and human rights, and is a Law Foundation of Ontario Public Interest Articling Fellow. When not articling, Tom enjoys exploring new music and checking out the local brewery scene. Carly Leons, our other guest, is a staff lawyer in the LAO clinic system and the co-founder, of Legal Listening, uh,
Sorry, Zach.
a public legal education podcast. After not being hired back by the government, Carly went on a journey towards new employment in the weirdest time to have done so. When not lawyering, Carly enjoys baking and belongs to a monthly sticker club. I can definitely testify to her baking skill. I have received some of her cookies in the mail.
It's almost
Fantastic.
Christmas time.
It's almost Christmas. Yeah, my body is ready. All right, so you two are here. You're both in different stages of your law career. Tom, you're an articling student. Carly, you are a junior counsel with the LAO, as we mentioned. And yeah, we're here to talk about sort of your experience with the job market and see if you have any tips, any practices, special ways to stay sane. But first of all, Tom, I'm going to start with you. You were closest out of all of us to the articling recruit, and also you went through that recruit during well, you started before pandemic times, right?
Yeah, I did start
Yeah.
I started the articling recruit during the pandemic, but I had like done my OCIs and stuff just before the pandemic.
So why don't you talk a little bit about your experience, looking for articling position in the current scenario? What was it like? What was it like interviewing? How did you sort of approach it?
Well, I started with honestly what was left because, given the circumstances, everyone was sort of unsure whether they were hiring, and there was this big question mark about, okay, are we returning to in-person work? What will the courts be doing, and how will that affect like what's on the docket? What kind of volume are people working with? So there wasn't a lot to go on to start, but I just, I made that work, and I really just, there was a lot of just sorting categories of, okay, I am qualified for this. This would interest me or not. This would not. And I really just divided and conquered. And eventually it worked out, but there was definitely some trial and error. I didn't get any interviews in Ottawa, for example, and ended up here in Toronto, which is actually glad how things worked out.
Glad to have you here. And Carly, how about you? I'm going to start you off a little bit later. Coming into the end of your articling period, if you were aware that you weren't being hired back ahead of time. So talk to me a little bit about job hunting in that environment.
Yeah, so like I didn't do the articling recruit because I just did the OCIs, and then my OCI job was my articling job. Because I was lucky because I was one of the only branches that doesn't make you interview again. And it was one of the main reasons why I took that job as a summer job, because I knew I wouldn't have to interview again. So I articled there. Like, obviously going into government positions, given one, the hiring freeze, and two, like the way government works generally, it's like, unless you sort of really luck out and get a position, it's kind of a dice roll. Like, there's no guarantee you're going to get hired back. They have no authority to just hire you back. Like, they're going to do like a formal recruit no matter what. So, a position came up at my branch. I applied for it. My fellow articling student got it and I didn't. And like, absolutely no, like, she's wonderful. She's doing a terrific job. She's absolutely fabulous. If anybody was going to get the job, she definitely deserved it. But it left me sort of like, well, oh, so I didn't really sure. Luckily, I like had put very little faith in being hired back for the government. Not in like no faith in myself, but as in like, I know this process is very like how you perform on the day of, because the government is point scored interviews, right? So it's like you could have been the best articling student they'd ever seen in 15 years. And it's like irrelevant if you don't do well on the day of with the questions they give you on the day of your interview, which is whatever. We won't get into that today, how silly I think that is as a concept, but it's fine. So it's like, you know, I didn't really bank on it at all. So I like in February, and I knew it was going to be done in June, started like looking for stuff. And yeah, like really early. And I just sort of like, I don't know. I just like attacked it with full force. Like I really did. I think by the end I had submitted like 60 applications, 60. Like separate ones.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, you know, and it's not like I got like nothing, but it's like I did 60 applications. I probably did 10-ish interviews. And then I was given 3 offers. And then I took the one that I took now. So like I definitely like attacked it very aggressively. And it was but I'm glad I did, because honestly it gave me the space to like stay. Like the first job I was offered, it's like I said no because I was like, oh, I got sort of bad vibes from the process. And it's like, because I knew I'd put in so many applications, I felt like I could say no. So it's like something else is going to come up. It's not like I was sort of just like riding on this entirely. So yeah, like, you know, and doing all this like completely remote, like I articled entirely remotely. I went into the office to pick up my computer, and I went into the office to bring my computer back, and I never was in the office again. So yeah, trying to do all of this remotely was certainly challenging, but I don't know. It's weird times, right? And
yeah. Doing our best here. I'm going to come back to a couple of points you raised about interview styles and saying no to things, but I want to go back to something that Tom said about sort of sorting through things that interest you and prioritizing based on that. Why don't you talk a little bit about your process, about is it about knowing yourself first? Is it about kind of like feeling out the different positions and what drives your interest? What's your kind of approach to that?
I mean, my process was very much trial and error. Like early on, I made the mistake of not catering the positions I was applying to necessarily my interests or my passions. And it was very much like anything could be a stepping stone. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that although volume is great, applying to many positions is great, I realized that where actually success was in the positions that I considered a little bit more carefully, like, could I actually work here? Is that something I would be able to do? Not only in terms of the work they do, but also like the working conditions and the culture there. So my process was really, really carefully looking at not only what the firm does, but probably even more carefully, firm or organization, I should say, but also looking even more carefully about sort of the culture there, which I find is a very loaded word in the legal profession, especially. Like we talk about it all the time, it's almost meaningless. But really, can you bring your whole self to work? Can you not water down your personality or be somebody else, which is something I felt I couldn't do and still think I can't. So there were definitely some postings that didn't make that cut. And part of that process was not just sort of sussing out the substance of the posting, but also talking to other people who had worked at those places, or people who could put me in touch with people who had, because a lot of that is subtextual. Like you're not going to get that from the posting itself, but it is important. So why invest all of that time and potentially interview somewhere where you're not actually, like it's not a good fit for them, it's not a good fit for you. So I really carefully considered all of that. On top of that, like also the type of work was important to me. Like early on, I was applying to like insurance, defense, and tax law. And you know, anyone who knows me knows that's not my vibe. Don't know why I did that.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
You don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So Carly, and how about you? I know you mentioned, 60 applications, obviously a large volume, but what was your approach to sort of pre-application research and sort of weeding things out as you went?
Yeah. So like, it's a large volume, but like, consider that like 30 of those were probably positions in the government. right? So it's like not that those applications are identical, but like they are certainly similar. And it's like when you work for Meg already, like the network is already built in. Like it's especially while I was still at the government, right? Because I started so early, it was very easy to be like, oh, can I like talk to this person from environment and see like what I should be putting on those applications? I don't think it particularly helped me. I also cannot hide the way that I am, which doesn't tend to lend itself well to government interviews because like I am incapable of having a flat affect and answering questions. Like I cannot do that. I do not have it in me. So I tend to do much better in private sector jobs, like be that clinic or whatever. So I definitely did better statistically in not government jobs, which is funny considering I articled for the government and was in the higher back pool. But I did do better not in the government stuff. And then like, yeah, it's more so like, I was less picky with the type of work because I didn't really care. Type as in like what you were actually doing, right? So if it was like research based or solicitor work or litigation work, like I wasn't picky in that sense because like I'm not picky in that sense. Like I can do any of that work. So I wasn't picky in that sense, but I was picky in like, essentially was like, can I live with myself and work here was like the question. And it's like that. That's a very different answer for every single person because every single person is coming at things from a completely different perspective, right? So like, it's not a value judgment that I wouldn't apply somewhere because I couldn't deal with it if I worked there. Like that's not a value judgment on other people. It's just like selecting things that make the most sense for me, just like Tom was saying, because it's like, you don't want to do something that doesn't fit, right? And, you know, I had hooked up with a couple legal recruiters and I had done some interviews based on that. And it was the type of thing where it's like, you know, 15 minutes into this conversation, so many red flag things had been said. Like, and I was just like, cool, I'm never speaking to these people ever again because this is terrifying. But I will be very nice and polite and thank them for their time because I was thankful for their time. But it's like, I don't want to work here. And you just sort of make it clear that it's not really your scene. And that's fine, right? It's like that way, you know, because a lot of the times you don't know, especially because like some places have gotten very good at putting like language that suggests they're less terrible than they are in job postings. So, you know, you're looking for certain keywords and sometimes they, you know, the machines are learning. They'll like put the keywords in the posting. So like, you're not really sure, you know,
are you saying these postings are written by robots?
Yeah, well, no, it's just like sometimes.
Almost
sometimes. And like or sometimes it's the opposite, right? Like it's like sometimes a posting can be so familiar that it's like, oh, this place has no boundaries. There is no way I will be able to actually have like my job life and my life if I work at this place. This whole post is a red flag. And it's like, it happens, right? And it's like to each their own, like, you know what I mean? Like, again, like, it's not like I'm judging people who would like that type of a job. It's just like, I don't want that type of a job. I can't make the law my entire personality. So I don't want to work at those types of places, right? So it's, you know, it's a lot of sussing out, I find.
So many great points in there. However, there were a couple questions from the chat that I said I would get to. So first one, I guess, is for you, Carly. Is 60 apps normal? I've heard of 100 apps for articles, but not sure about post-articling.
Yeah, so it's really hard because it's like the pandemic times. So I think with my cohort, it was like, I think firms had very seriously held back and not hired back in the cohort before me. And so then when it hit my cohort, there were like jobs all over the place just because like they decided to just take the immediate extreme cheap option and hire no one. And they were like, oh, just kidding. We actually can't do anything. And legal work has gone up, not down.
Right.
So then they scramble hired. So, you know, I don't really know anybody in my cohort who's had a hard time finding a posting. And again, like, keep in mind that a lot of my applications were government. So you can't even apply to those unless you're in the government hire back pool. So it's like, if you're looking at jobs I just applied for from like word of mouth or like postings I saw in the Ontario reports and stuff, it's like, then you're looking at more like 30-ish, 40-ish. It's certainly less. And when I got to do, which I don't know if you're actually technically supposed to do this, but if you're not, I'm sorry, LSO. I had a friend send me the Ontario reports before I was actually called so that I could look at the jobs in them before. And so like I was applying to those jobs as well, which was also very helpful. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think 60 might have been a little bit of overkill. It also depends where you're looking, right? Like I was looking kind of everywhere, but when I interviewed, I was kind of like, look, I'm only going back in the office 2 days a week at most for the rest of my life, because like I have no interest in working in an office 5 days a week ever again. And people were pretty good with that, right? Because I was very upfront about it. Like that, I was extremely upfront about that. That's what I wanted. So, you know, it probably limited me, I guess. But again, it's like I only ended up interviewing at places that were cool with that. So yeah, it's like now, right? Like, you know, I'm still living in Windsor, but my job is in Toronto, and I go back and forth because like there are infinite more clinic jobs in Toronto than there are clinic jobs in Windsor, right? So it also depends on where you're looking. It depends on how much money you need to be able to make your bill payments. Like there's a ton of factors, which is going to change all this for each individual person. But, you know, it's not like hopeless or anything. It's just very annoying.
Great. Thank you so much for answering. What are the Ontario reports? So Ontario reports are there are two things. They're case reports, first of all, important cases in Ontario. This is all put out by the Law Society of Ontario, by the way. It's a digital magazine that has classified ads. It has announcements of new licensees or surrendering licenses, disciplinary actions. Sometimes law firms will also post new hires in there or new partners. It's just a good source for. Yeah, thank you for the link, Fikan. It's just a good place to look for ads for jobs. Ultimately, is what most of us use it for. Another question: I've had a couple of interviews with organizations, but they ultimately tell me I'm not qualified enough, or I'm too qualified for a position, which completely confuses me. Any idea how to navigate this? So Tom, I'll let you talk about this first. Have you ever been told after an interview that you're either not qualified enough or too qualified, and how do you sort of deal with that?
I've gotten one, not the other. I did get, you know, early on during my OCIs, I interviewed with a multinational firm doing tax. I have never taken tax. I have never done any tax courses. And it was sort of, we finished the interview. It was like, thank you for your time. And that's sort of how it ended up. And it was, and in that sense, I think it was justified, but I also, I don't know what Carly thinks, she might have more experience there, but I think that those two sort of phrases can also be a bit of a cop-out. Like I don't know many people who've asked for feedback after an interview that didn't go well. I have.
I do quite often.
Ooh, brave. Man, I'm never doing that.
Oh, I do all the time.
I make a point
never
of doing
do.
it.
Yeah. Unless the interview was so bad that there's really nothing I can learn, or / I would be too embarrassed to talk to the person in the game. Yeah, I always ask for feedback.
Oh my god,
I
you guys
did that
are
with the tax one because I knew why they weren't interested, but I have done others.
Yeah.
I Larry David it. No notes, please. I don't want them. No, thank you.
Carly, how about you? Have you ever heard that? Have you ever heard of other people that heard that?
Again, I don't ask for feedback on interviews because like I get it, and it would ultimately probably be helpful for me, but again, it's just like, I don't know. Yeah. I don't need you to placate me. Like, it's fine. If you just wanted to go with another person, like I can live with that, and I've made space. Like, again, like I think that's the big thing about job hunting is like you have to preemptively make space for your grief, because there will be things you do not get that you really, really want, and you have to make space for those feelings.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I think because I had done so much front end work making space for my feelings, it was kind of like whatever, it's fine. Like I'll live, I'll be okay. And like what my friend says, what's meant for you doesn't pass you. So it's like I knew I'd land somewhere. So yeah, I don't ask feedback. It's weird because I've never gotten like overqualified or underqualified, but more like you just don't have. I think they usually just say like, oh, like what's your experience in this specific practice area, because they're looking for you to have like that specific type of experience.
Yeah.
And I have like, I don't know, I have analogized my way into offers with law. I have no idea how to do because I've never done it. And like, I'm not being dishonest, right? It's not like I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a pro at WSIB, do it all the time. It's like, no, what I say is I've never done A, but I have done B very extensively. And I think that A and B are almost identical in terms of skills.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you're saying it needs like XYZ skill. It's like, oh, well, I have XYZ skill. So all I need to do is learn the law. And like, I have a whole degree in learning the law.
Yeah, the thing is, we're trained to learn things, right? Like, no one comes out of law school with a fully formed knowledge of any area, really. If they think, and if someone thinks they do, they're
That's
they're
right.
wrong.
Oh.
They're wrong.
Red flag higher. Thanks.
Speaking of red flags, got a question to elaborate on what are some typical red flags you encounter in
Ooh,
interviews.
that's a good
We're a family is the biggest
We're a
red
family.
flag
Mhm.
for any firm. Like there are bet costs, like whatever. There's like costs and whatever benefits to working at different size firms, and everyone has a thing that they prefer. But like anecdotally, every time a law firm has, and like it's one thing if you say it like once, as in like we're a family and we take care of our employees by offering the following super great benefits. Like, yeah, that's fine. It's when they like really lean into that, like we're a family, this is our life, like that's a huge, like you're going to be working 90 hours a week and getting underpaid and there's going to be no boundaries, do not work there, right? Like that's a huge red flag, not even from a law perspective, from like a labor perspective. That is a giant red flag. Because I mean, you know, as someone who did sort of extensive Employment Standards Act violation-y type things, and I still do, it's like family businesses can be the worst employers, like yeah, like statistically. So it's just like, you know, we're a family to me is a big red flag. And not, again, like not mentioning it once, not using it in the context of how much you care about the people that work there in terms of the benefits you offer, like that's different. Just in terms of like really leaning in, like when you see nothing about like what the job actually offers, and instead of that there's a bunch of weird idioms about how like we have mandatory socialization events. Like no.
Yeah, the mandatory socializations. Those definitely put me off when I was interviewing at various firms. Like, am I gonna be forced to play softball here? No, thank you. Tom, how about you? What are some red flags that you look for?
I'm so glad you asked. I make a point of, you know, being pretty transparent on my CV for that purpose. Because one of the biggest red flags I have found is in an interview that takes the course of all of a sudden all we're talking about is diversity and inclusion, and you're interested in the fact that I have queer advocacy on my CV. You'd think that's actually a green flag, that's a good sign. The worst interviews I've had, or like even like the biggest red flags in terms of employers, are the ones who just zero in on that and don't ask anything else about qualifications or whatever. It's just like, oh, we have a gay applicant in front of us. Let's hone in on that. And it's like, all right, well, I don't want to work here because you don't treat me like a person. So I find one actual way to sort of filter out and suss out how people might react and whether you can actually bring your whole self to work, as I like to say, is to actually like, I put that stuff on my CV. Like I had like queer advocacy, I put that right on, and I do see how they respond to that. And if they respond overwhelmingly to that, but totally ignore the fact I'm interviewing for a job, big red flag.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it's like, not that, I mean, this isn't a secret, but like if anybody ever interviews for the government ever, a mandatory question on every single interview forevermore is they're going to ask you an equity, diversity, inclusion question. And like, to me, the branches with the biggest red flags who were people who like, you could tell they weren't even listening to my answer. They were just like, oh, they have an answer. Check. Like next question. So yeah, so you know, because I've interviewed at several branches, and I would say there's only one actually. The rest of them were actually really good, but the one branch was a big red flag because they literally didn't even listen to the answer.
I think I remember one interview where I got an EDI question. This was obviously a few years before you, but yeah, I think I remember the interviewer actually really liking my answer. The problem is I kind of flunked the other ones. So when I asked for feedback later, she said, "Yeah, I really want to hire you because I actually really liked your answer on this, and this, but like you didn't know the act well enough and so forth." But yeah, I asking questions like that just make it kind of perfunctory, and then they aren't even like listening to the answer. Like, yeah, that's not really.
They don't do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Performative.
Since we're talking about interviews, let's go a little bit more into interview styles. So, Tom, talk a little bit about like the different places that you interviewed. You mentioned nonprofit, you mentioned private law, government. What were the different interview styles, and sort of how did you approach each of them?
Well, again, like I really do believe in being as candid as possible in an interview. Obviously, you do sort of have to tailor that a little bit. For like, I've interviewed with, I've done a government interview, I've done nonprofit, I've done Bay Street, and I've done medium-sized firms. Different styles for different things. Like Carly mentioned, the government is obviously a very specific style, and I did feel not that I couldn't be myself, but maybe there were different, I'd say different parts of yourself that you'll emphasize during different interviews. And that maybe a better way of putting that is that you're not really trying to suppress anything or hide anything, but you obviously will play up different things. So interviewing with a nonprofit, for example, I really did feel like, okay, I can let my passions show here, and this is why it's a good fit. And maybe more with the government interview, I had to be like, look, I do enjoy legal research, and really play up that part. So you do kind of have to feel out what they're looking for, and really take a good look at yourself and see like what can you really put a spotlight on, and not so much of like what are you trying to hide, because they're going to figure that out. If you're like me, you're probably not very good at sort of hiding who you are or your personality, and so I had to approach it that way.
Would you say the particular style that you excelled at or preferred?
I did better with the nonprofit and government than I did Bay Street. Bay Street, I found almost like I wasn't comfortable in the space, which I think kind of make it difficult. Like government interview was fine. You just had to know the statute in and out. It was, well, it doesn't matter which statute it was, but you had to know it. Nonprofits, I feel like that's sort of where Weird and Wonderful comes out. So I really did vibe with that interview style.
Great.
But it really depends on the person.
Yeah. And Carly, same questions to you.
Yeah. So I'd say like I run the gamut. I've interviewed at all the places. So government, I would say I am by far the worst at, because I am, if anything, I am myself all the time. And I truly cannot not be this way. Like I really can't. So, I try to be more formal. I really do in government interviews, but it's like, I can't, I'm never not gonna make jokes because it's just my personality. Like I have a very hard time doing it, right? So it's like, as much as I've tried to not make jokes, I still do. And I don't think that particularly helps me on government interviews, because they are both timed and scored. So every word wasted is a point lost. Which is funny, because I think the only reason I ever got my job with the government is because I made a joke about the Iron Age in my firm interview. Like I'm almost positive that's why I got the job in the first place, but it was a different people interviewing.
Wait, sorry, I have to know this. How did they fit a joke about the Iron Age into a labor interview?
We were talking about so we were talking about, I can't remember what we were talking about specifically, but like I made a joke about the Iron Age, and they were like, oh, something. And then I made like an Upton Sinclair joke, because I was saying like we had to present a case comment, and they're like, I did my full case comment, whatever. And they're like, oh, well, what did you think of the case? I was like, well, it made me want to throw a copy of The Jungle by Upton Sinclair at everybody. And like, I just said that in my infirm. And it's like, I actually think that did get me the job. But like, I think stuff like that has cost me all of the government interviews since, because like they just, not that like you're getting points taken off. It's just like you literally only have so many minutes, and every word is a point. Right. And so it's like you lose points all the time. Private law firms, I actually don't mind at all. Obviously, I understand that like the privilege of being just like a normal looking white lady, that helps a lot. So as Tom was saying, like feeling uncomfortable in the space, like unless it's like full of a lot of rich people, I generally feel mostly comfortable. If there's too many rich people, forget it. They'll smell me. I'll have to run. But generally it's fine. I've actually found being on Zoom is very helpful with that, because like I get like femme presentation emotions sometimes in big law places, because I'm a very low femme person and it's a very high femme place. So sometimes I can get those emotions, but I found that that's sort of gone away over Zoom. So I'm much more comfortable doing these types of things. Yeah, because like private law interviews are fun because they're just like shoot the shit interviews, which like I worked in customer service for so long. Like that's my wheelhouse, man. Like I'll talk about whatever dumb thing you want to talk about. Like it's totally fine. Like sure, like I'll talk about like golf. Like I don't care. Like sure, whatever. Well, but it's like I know, like, and I have a background.
Tom
like,
refuses.
No,
I know enough. Yeah. So it's like private law was fine, and then government I found extremely overly formal and stilted, and they drive me crazy, which sucks because like I truly did love almost every single person at the branch I worked at, like absolutely the best people on earth. It's just like the way they do interviews, I think is silly. And then clinics are the middle, right? Like clinics are your middle ground. Clinics are like sometimes weird, sometimes fun, sometimes silly. It depends on who the executive director is. It depends on who's talking to you. You certainly have brought like tons of runway to show who you are as a person, which is like why I like the clinic system, because the clinic system is full of weirdos and it's like the best place because there's just weirdos everywhere, including myself. Yeah, so I'd say clinics are the middle. Like I would never, like, I don't know, in clinics, I find are very good at sussing out your true intentions. Like it is very hard to bullshit an ED who's been around for 35 years that you like actually care about poverty law when you don't really care. Like they're going to smell you from a mile away. It's never going to work. So I find that they're very good at sussing out actual intentions. And so you can sort of like actually be yourself and like talk about stuff you think is neat or cool or places you'd like to see the law go. Like I find there's lots of runway to actually like geek out about the law in clinic stuff. And yeah, I've never bothered with nonprofits because they tend to be horrible employers. So they were on my list of don't apply for, quite honestly, because nonprofits don't have a terribly good reputation in terms of labor and like rights of workers. No, not all, obviously not all of them, but it's like, yeah, on the whole, they don't have the best reputation. So plus I was very spoiled because Meg, not criminal crowns, I don't think, but Meg students like at the main Meg where I was, they're all unionized, which is like quite honestly awesome to be a unionized articling student. It was the best. So yeah, I'm
something that maybe more articling students should have access to someday.
Teddy, don't tell the people to unionize. The LSO will kick us out.
Sorry, let me take
don't get me kicked out before I'm even allowed it.
Don't do it.
Spy told me not to wear my everyone unionized shirt. So we're going to wrap up fairly soon, but I did want to get to one question that I think was a really good one that both of you brought up, and that is on the point of saying no. When have you said no to a job? What advice would you give, and what factors went into the what did you sort of consider before you thought about saying no to a job offer? And Tom, I'll start with you.
I have said no to only one law job, and it was because I absolutely don't think that I was right for the job in the sense that I would have been miserable there. And like I know Carly had mentioned earlier that for her it's not as important what the work is. For me, it's not super important, as in like I have a very broad interests. But this particular job is just so far outside of that I just couldn't imagine coming to work and being excited to learn about those things, which for me, like I need to feel energized at work to really do a good job. And it wasn't it. So it was just sort of a polite decline. And it was a bit of a calculated risk because I did have to keep looking because I had nothing else lined up. So that was super scary. But it did work out in the end.
Are you able to elaborate on that at all? Like, why did you feel like it was very strongly that wouldn't be a good fit?
Because it was transactional. And for like, again, like, I don't think I could have gotten through it. I think that I would have regretted having taken it. So I didn't.
Good. Carly, how about you?
Yeah, so I've turned down 2 jobs since I've been called. So the one was very easy because like I literally applied before I got the job I'm at now. And because certain arm's length government agencies take 5 months to run competitions sometimes. So I had applied in like April and they offered me a job in September. So so I was like, you guys are great. And I really liked meeting you, but also I literally have another job already. So like, I'm going to have to decline, but that was a cool one. Cause like, I'm on a contract right now, but that was something where like, we had a really good rapport and they were really great. So it's like, I definitely left the door open and I explained like, I'm currently on a contract. I'm still very interested. And you can ask too, like, oh, especially if it's a government organization that has to run a competition, ask specifically, right? Be like, oh, like, if you're hiring again, will it be the same competition? Will you have a new competition? How long will I be considered if positions open up? Please consider me if any positions open up after X date. And, I certainly had that conversation with them. So that door I left completely open should I want to walk into it in the future. And then the other one, I got offered the job the day I got rejected from the ministry. So I had gotten my rejection ministry call and then, I got the offer, but I was still waiting to hear from the ministry. So then I emailed the ministry and I was like, hey, like, it's been like 3 weeks. Like, are you guys ever going to make a decision? Like, please decide or I'm going to take this job. And so they called me, they go, well, you didn't get the job. And I was like, okay. So like I thought about it and I sat and talked to my husband and just sort of tried to talk it out. And it was like, I would have had to move to Toronto, which I didn't want to do.
No remote option.
It's glorious.
No, yeah, zero remote option for work that like I know for a fact can be done remotely. Like definitely. 2, lots of like red flaggy, tiny Napoleon runs the office language, which like, and some people need that, right? Like some people need like extreme structure and they need to be dictated to and told what to do for their day. I am the opposite of that person. I do the best when given like the most rope. Like I am the best when given like endless autonomy. That's like how I thrive. Like it's what I like to do. So I was like, it didn't seem like the management style that I would jive well with. And then there was like some gendered comment was made about like, oh, that's what it was. It was just kind of like, well, can you take this job? It was essentially like, could I even take the job if my husband had another job somewhere else? Like it was something like that. And I was just like, yeah, but it's not an issue. Anyway, I'll talk it over and I'll get back to you. So it's like, yeah. So I was like, it's like, could I have taken it? Yes. I felt very desperate in that moment. And so for a while, I was like, I guess I'll just take it and put up with it for a year. And then I was like, no, like this isn't a good idea.
Yeah.
So I called and I also wrote an email and it was like, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. I don't think this is going to be a good fit for either of us. You want someone who's able to be in office in a week. And like, you're very aware that I don't live there and that it's going to take me a while to get there and, all this stuff. So I sort of like explained it and very thankful, very polite. And, that like, that's not a door I would ever open again, but you don't want to burn bridges either, right? Just try to be as nice as possible. Just like, no, it's not a good fit for you, right? It's like, I'm lucky enough to know myself well enough that I was like, I'd really hate this, I think. Even though like, it's not the type of law I would have liked the type of law fine. It was literally just the atmosphere.
For sure.
Bad vibes.
Great. Thank you both. One last thing, actually, before we go. What's next for each of you? Do you have you want to talk about any of your plans for the future? Talk about what you're going through now? How you keep an eye out for jobs as you're working at your current one? What's going on coming up in your life? Tom, start with you.
Well, I've actually had 2 different people actually come up with great metaphors. One of them was that I'm walking towards a cliff. The other one was that I'm walking towards a bridge under construction. I will go with the bridge one. So basically, as an articling fellow, I knew from the beginning that there's no hire back. This is not how this works. I'm being paid by the Law Foundation because my employer qualified for a grant for people who need, public interest work because they don't have a lot of money. So I've been fortunate that I have the heads up. I've just been basically looking constantly since I started. And I know it's very early now. So my process right now is really just connecting with different lawyers and, whether that's over Twitter or, I'm not going to like wine and cheese nights or anything like that right now, but there's been a lot of that and increasingly more like online postings. There have been a few applications. But yeah, I'm really just moving towards whatever's next. I don't think it's going to be constitutional. I think it'll probably be anything from employment to immigration, family law, who knows, but I'm keeping my options open.
Carly, I invite you now as the time to mention your process that you're very excited about.
My process. So I made a Google Doc with every job I ever applied to, and then everything was color coded. So it was like, orange was the application. If I got an interview, it was yellow. If I got rejected, I made it red. And then if I got an offer, I made it green. And I put everything in a big chart and I kept track of everything. And then I also did the same thing for all the people I talked to. I stole both of these ideas in some form from Jen Philpott, who talked about this last year on the show. But it really helped to like keep track of everybody I talked to. I checked Twitter all the time. I put out many posts on Twitter, and many fabulous lawyers talk to me just like out of the goodness of their hearts, just about whatever, like even if I'm not really interested in the area of law, they were super helpful in terms of just like how to approach things. So yeah, Twitter is better than every single networking event I ever attended times 1,000.
I'd agree with that.
Way better.
Yeah.
I also checked the ORs. I checked Indeed. I checked all of the local law associations because they also usually have postings. I checked LAO's postings. I checked what's the Indeed for nonprofits?
Charity
That
Village.
one,
Yeah,
Charity
Charity
Village,
Village,
because
yeah.
clinic
Yeah, I
jobs
checked that
get
off
posted.
this.
Yeah,
Mhm.
clinic jobs get posted there. And then I literally just like put out calls to people, like professors I'd worked with, told them I was looking, and like they put out feelers for me as well. And I got, like a tremendous amount of assistance and help in applying for positions. And like, it was a lot of networking, but not like, I don't know. I don't do like wine and cheese things because rich people scare me, right? So it's like it was more just like having conversations with they're scary.
Yeah,
I was
get
just
it.
more just like having conversations with people.
Mhm.
So, and it was very helpful. And again, like there's no like, I don't know, it's never too early to start figuring it out. I'm certainly already looking. I'm on a contract, but the future of the clinic I'm at right now is very uncertain. So I keep saying I feel like a governor in Nero's Rome. Like it's like the city is slightly on fire, and I'm just like, it's great, pay your taxes. I don't know. It's a good time. Because like the clinic I'm at now right now might not exist in a couple of years, it might get amalgamated, whatever. It has an uncertain future at the moment. So it's not going to be a long-term career for me or anything. So I'm always on the lookout for new and very exciting opportunities. As I say, my contract's up in the spring, summer time-ish. Maybe I'll get extended, maybe I won't. But again, like I'm always looking for opportunities, especially in the government or in other things like LAO as well. Things closer to where I live now, you always have to keep an eye out. And I check compulsively just in case things come up. And again, like, it never hurts to apply to stuff. Like I literally had 2 rounds of interviews with like the massage therapy college because like I had done regulatory work, right? And it's like, I didn't know anything about any of the acts that applied to those people, but it was like, I know how to learn about an act and I have experience in this like type of regulation because I'd done it previously with other professions and stuff in my work in the government. So it's like, draw through lines through your own stuff and analogize where things are relevant, right? Because like sometimes it's like you look at a post and you're like, I'm not qualified for that. And it's like, do it anyway. Like, I don't know, do it anyway. If it's a job you think is really cool, apply anyway, whatever. Worst case, they see you and they're just like, they're not really qualified, but this resume is really cool. So that when they post again, your name jumps out to them, right? Like, you never know.
Yeah, funnily enough, I worked on a file recently where I had to learn about massage therapy regulation in BC specifically, which was so basically massage therapy college hire me. So I have an answer, late breaking question. I have an answer to this if either of you don't. But what are your thoughts on cold calling lawyers that work at places you're interested in? I heard it's not cool to reach out to someone if you are just looking for a job, but as an articling student, it must be obvious that you're looking. And they clarified by saying by cold calling they also mean cold emailing.
Yeah, I mean, oh my god, the concept of cold calling terrifies me, but actually calling people on the phone, so like don't call me.
I don't even use my phone. I got 7 I got 7 scam phone calls
Please
today.
don't call me.
Ridiculous.
I'm kidding, you can call me, but the emailing I think is actually fine. I mean, it's always helpful. It's helpful if someone can do the intro for you. So like there's certainly people I talk to that like someone brokered the introduction just so they're like, hey, this is Carly, she's not a lunatic, please talk to her, and then it was fine.
Why would
So
they lie
it's
for
like
you?
well, I know. It's like if you can have someone broker the interaction, that tends to be helpful. And like I've certainly done that like with people, like people are like, oh, I'm interested in like I do it with Claire all the time. You're like, oh, I have a family law thing. I was like, Claire's the only person I know in Windsor who does family law. Let me get Claire for you. And then I will be like, hi, Claire, this is the person who wants to talk to you, blah, 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 blah. Right. So it's like, I do that all the time. It's not weird. And I think if you're really, really interested, you can try to get someone to broker the introduction for you if you think it would be awkward. Like if there's someone who's like crazy senior or impressive or something. I would say almost all people under 5 years of call will literally not care and will talk to you because like they're very generous with their time. And I've talked to so many people from Twitter, like literally, like I have made so many calls to people just because like they have liked my tweets. And I was like, hello, I see that you have liked my content. Can I please call you and ask you about this thing? And they've been really good, right? So I don't know, lawyers love talking, as is evidenced by me the last 45 minutes. So it's just like, I don't think anybody's going to really hate it. Again, like, I don't know. Don't cold email like Frank Iacobucci at Tories and be like, hey, Frank, please talk to me. But like, other than that, I think you're probably fine if it's anybody junior. They're usually really good. And again, like there are also people on the internet and off who are very good at making introductions, and even people at your law school, like when I was really stuck, like I was asking profs to do intros for me that I was close to, or career services offices. Like I know you're graduated, but like I don't know, actually no, I won't speak to career services offices at other places, but like if you went to Windsor, like they will definitely help you because Anna is the best. So yeah.
Tom, any thoughts on that?
I don't like the cold call, mostly because I think the phone is important. But in terms of like actually making those connections, honestly, I made most of mine off Twitter. I found that was the easiest way. You just kind of put yourself out there, and even if you have like in my case, there's a bit of sort of my brand's kind of law, also a mix of sort of cheeky tweets mixed in. And occasionally you would make connections that way, that it's not even about, you're not connecting about the law per se, but it's just sort of a mutual interest or a shared sense of humor. And then from there, I've had so many introductions just that way, where it's somebody's been like, look, I think that you should talk to this person. And they've made the intro and it's been great. I've had 2 calls this week.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great.
Like you don't need to have like a perfect, like my brand is like the ants from Practical Magic. Like you don't need to have like like you can be yourself. Your brand can be like reflective of who you actually are, right? Like my Twitter is like Halloween and the things I bake and like funny stories about my niece and like law and getting mad at housing. And like that's it.
I've totally tossed all the advice I got from social media classes at law school.
Oh, it's garbage.
I just tweet like, I don't know, D&D stuff and niche gamer tweets and weird jokes and internet memes and occasionally actual informative law content.
Yeah, well, and like
that's the brand, and that's how I can make connections too, honestly.
Exactly, and like as I told the students in the clinic seminar class I was paneling in with Zach a couple weeks ago, like we can tell when you're just tweeting because you're trying to build a weird hustle bro content farm tweet thread. Stop it. I hate it.
Well, you can tell, I mean, you can see fakeness very easily, right?
Yes,
like
it's very, especially internet savvy people. Yeah, it's very easy.
Sure. Yeah, totally agree. Well, great. Thank you so much, both of you, for your time and for all of your wisdom given to you here. We've got a great audience tonight. Everyone chatting away and talking and asking questions. Thank you so much for viewing. Everyone, if you like this show, please give us a follow. Follow buttons below the stream. You can also follow the Twitter account. It's lawyers_stream. And you can find me at Teddy Weinstein, and the others, you can find their handles on their name tags right there, at Nightchuck Thomas and at KLeo23. Also follow, do you want to plug your other thing, Carly?
Yeah, listen to my podcast. So me and Zach Battiston, who's my co-founder, have a podcast called Legal Listening, which my husband is the silent third partner of because he edits all the episodes. It's an audio recording podcast that's legal decisions. So like if you need to read a decision for school or your practice or whatever, and you don't have time to read it, you can listen to it. And it's a bespoke audio experience, as we call it. And we also have a bunch of like case summaries and public legal education content. And we're also recording the entirety of the TRC executive summary report. We're on part 14, of which both Tom and Teddy helped record. So we're working through that as well. So yeah, tons of content on there. It's legal listening and the photo's an owl, and it's that on everything, like on the general internet and also Twitter and Facebook too.
Awesome. Great. And as for what's coming up on this channel, we're been doing alternating weeks for the talk show thing, and also doing gaming on those off weeks. So next week, going to be playing a little bit of Halo. If anyone is a lawyer and also a gamer, you can get at me, and we'll shoot some dudes together. And then the week following, we will have another 2 guests to talk about going to law school as mature students. Not ready to announce the guests yet. However, very excited to have them on. They are dear friends, and yeah, look forward to that. Thanks everyone for Lawyers Who Stream Discord. No, but we should make a Discord. That's a good point. Fuck emergency. Maybe next week. I joked about needing a social media intro, and I think I actually do need one now.
There you go. I mean, ask PBSC.
Ask PBSC. That
I kid. The
it
podcast
might-
is doing a project with PBSC. That's why I say this. But yeah.
Yeah, I think your podcast is a little more deserving of that. Anyways, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for joining us tonight. And yeah, I will see you both soon.
Okay.
Bye.